Hello and welcome to Gaming Respawn Reviews. Today we'll be sinking our swords into the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, a PC remake of the classic choose-your-own-adventure story from the 80s. So, does this game well represent the original gamebook, or should it be just another pile of pulped pages? Let's find out. The story of the Warlock of Firetop Mountain concerns a warlock who lives in a place called Firetop Mountain.
Strange, isn't it?
You are one of several adventurers tasked with facing the dangers of Firetop Mountain to murder the Warlock and save the surrounding area from his presumable tyranny. Apart from this overarching plot, you also have one of several mini backstories or motivations, depending on which of the adventurers you pick. Some of them are being sent to complete some trial or another, and others are sent to deliver something to the wizard and just end up killing him. Either way, the actual story of the game once you start exploring is the same no matter who you pick, excluding some minor changes to dialogue. The main crux of the gameplay functions like a digital version of the book itself. You are presented with a faded page of text every time you reach a junction in the path or an encounter to deal with. The nicest thing is that the images that are sometimes used to illustrate the area you are in are sometimes taken directly from the books, obviously highly polished and colorized. Interestingly, you can also click on these images to have them presented in black and white or in full colour, which is a nice treat for fans of the original illustrations. The combat in the game is one of the updates to the book's mechanics. Instead of simply rolling against the stats of the enemies that you are facing, you have to move around a grid square by square, choosing exactly where to attack and where to move to. Once you've selected your choice, each character involved in the fight moves simultaneously, meaning that if you try to attack a monster, they can very easily move out of range. The only time the dice are used are when you and a monster choose to attack each other at the same time, leading to a clash where the dice decides the winner. There are 3 stats that quantify the abilities of each character: skill, stamina, and luck. Skill is your ability with your chosen weapon, or how good you are at tasks. Stamina is your health, and luck is, well, how lucky you are. Go figure. These stats are different for each character, meaning that some are better suited to different situations and approaches than others. The other major differences between characters are their combat moves, which can have different effects, like attacking before everyone else, or hitting more than one square at a time, and their passive abilities, that sometimes provide different solutions to puzzles or more information for future challenges. As you defeat monsters, you earn souls, which are a currency that you use on the main menu to purchase new characters to go through the adventure with. You also earn gold, which counts as both a score for the end of the adventure and as a way of buying certain objects as you play through the game. For the most part, the game works very well, and anyone who has any history with the Fighting Fantasy series, or just choose your own adventure books in general, is going to have a good time here for the most part. However, there are a few additions that have dragged the game down in a big way, and that is the randomization of certain segments. Most of the game is going to be the same no matter how many times you play through it. Yes, you will get different dialogue depending on who you play as, and yes, you may find different solutions to the puzzles because of new items that you didn't have before, but the actual path through the mountain hasn't changed. However, in what can only be assumed as an attempt to give the game more replayability, an entirely random section has been added to the game: a maze. Obviously, mazes in video games are some of the worst ideas that anyone has ever had, especially mazes with no foreseeable solution other than guessing at the right direction. In the original book, the maze was at least set in stone, meaning that even if you had to play through the game a few times, you could eventually learn the right path and get through the maze. This time, the maze is changed not only whenever you start a new game, but also whenever you die, meaning that your chances of getting through the maze are slim and almost entirely based on luck. Now, don't get me wrong, there are obviously going to be elements of any game that are based on luck, but a good game tries to minimise on them as much as possible, and this maze is just all about luck. The chances are that you're going to come up against elements that will kill you, and you'll have to use one of your only 3 tries to go back to the rest bench outside the maze. As soon as you boot back in, you'll notice that everything is different. This maze is the last section in the adventure, and you're probably going to end up trying it over and over again before you manage to finally make it through with a character. That's if you can actually keep going through it without wanting to smash something. Honestly, there are two things that could have been done to fix this issue. Number one is keeping the maze the same when you resurrect, only having it randomised when you start an entirely new game. The second is adding the luck damage mechanics from the book. Basically, in the book, you could use some of your luck score to either increase how much damage you were doing, or decrease how much damage you were taking. If this had been included, it might have made getting through the maze a bit easier. But I digress. The point is that the maze towards the end of your tiring adventure is more than likely going to make you want to stop playing. The whole game is set up to look like a tabletop adventure game. Each of the characters and monsters are rigid figures on round bases, and all of the scenery clatters onto the tables as if being dropped there by some omnipresent game master. Clearly the game's entire look is aimed at a mix between the fantastic and the mundane, both keeping itself firmly rooted in the kind of games that both inspired and were inspired by the fighting fantasy books, and allowing players to see a more visual representation of the fantastical adventure they are on. The whole visual side of the game works really well for the style, and it couldn't have been done better. The music and effects are ever present, but not particularly exciting. The music is the same generic fantasy music used by many fantasy games these days to represent the correct feel in the correct moment, and in that they are at least successful. The sound effects are also a strange combo of the realistic and the fantastic. You have both the noise of a plastic figurine being moved around a game board, but also the noises you'd expect to find in a fantasy-style dungeon, including flickering torches and shouting orcs. The juxtaposition between the two types of noise can be a little jarring at times, but for the most part this works quite well. This game represents something that I want to be excited about. A return of the fighting fantasy game books in an interesting adaptation that could really bring some life to the game books I spent my childhood enjoying. However, there are too many mistakes here to recommend this game to anyone who isn't a fan of the books themselves, or at least has a passing fancy for the series. Score, 60 out of 100. Thank you for watching Gaming Respawn Reviews. If you liked this video, please be sure to check out our other reviews of Event Zero, Unbox, Seasons After Fall, and Featherpunk Prime. Also, you can go to our website by clicking our spinning logo in the centre of the screen. I have been your host Will, thanks again for watching, and remember to keep playing.